Hi, I'm Alan Ross, and we are at Distributech 2025. We've got interviews with thought leaders, and we'd love for you to see what we've done here. Hey, thanks for joining us. My next guest is David McGinley. David has got a bunch of titles, but I just call him my EVP, Executive Vice President. You're with Asplundh, but talk a little bit about your career. How did you get where you are and what you're doing right now at Asplundh?
Okay. So when I graduated with an engineering degree, I started my career with Pico Energy in Philadelphia. Yeah. Now part of the Exelon family of companies. At that time, it was a standalone. Still, it was just... In fact, it was Philadelphia Electric Company at that time. Hadn't even changed their name to Pico. I worked there about a dozen years. I started mostly in distribution, electric distribution, construction management with the field forces. I worked in some management positions in the back office in our distribution operating centers. We had right around the 1999-2000 timeframe, they started to deregulate a little bit in Pennsylvania. Right. So Pico started some unregulated businesses. One of them was an infrastructure business. Okay. Their goal was to combine companies through acquisition that did gas, electric, telecom, and provide a broader range of services for utilities. Okay. So they started that business from scratch. In a 3-year period, we acquired about 10 different companies that started to brand them as Exelon's infrastructure services. It ultimately became InfraSource, ultimately acquired by Quanta. But I was in one of the operating groups that we had purchased, a company called VSI Meter Services. The previous owners had retired, so they put some of us in to help run and manage that. And when Pico merged with Commonwealth Edison and became Exelon, they decided to divest most of those unregulated businesses. Okay. One of the first things they sold was VSI Meter Services. They were not bullish on meter reading and AMI at the time, the automated meter reading. So Asplundh bought VSI Meter Services. That's how I came to be with Asplundh, and that was in 2003.
That was probably a wise decision from Asplundh, because now AMI is if you're not AMI, you're in trouble, right?
Yes, and I probably thought what most people thought at that time, why is a vegetation company buying a infrastructure group, a small meter services group? Right. I come to find that they did have a fair amount of construction and other services outside of vegetation. And I worked within VSI for a number of years, almost 10 years. Okay. They had another meter services group that we combined, ultimately rebranded it as Grid One. In 2013, I started to manage that group as president of Grid One. Right. And then about 2 years later, I got pulled into a corporate position and given a little bit more, responsibilities. I started to manage some of our construction operations. Right.
So that's where, from the president of Grid One to the EVP of something, if you're the EVP of something bigger than the president of something smaller. Yeah, that's right. That was a good move on your part. Yeah. Because I always thought of Asplundh as the cutting trees down and doing all of those kinds. We lived in Virginia at one point in time, and Asplundh was very big in that area. But as the industry's changed, Asplundh has really changed with it. We're going to talk about that in a minute. But first, you've been around. I mean, I love the fact that you were with Pico, because you've been around the industry and you've watched probably more change in the last 5 years than the 50 previous to that. Talk a little bit about what is changing. What do you see the biggest challenges are up to now with the utility industry?
There are really two main challenges I've seen in the utility industry over the last 5 to 10 years. We talked about it for almost a decade, but the aging workforce within the utility sector is now getting to the point where it's becoming, more prevalent. We talked about aging out all of your experienced technicians, the experienced people. The utilities were getting, leaner and meaner, but they were also hitting a wave of retirements of their technical expertise, their really tenured technicians and linemen, and the need to replenish that has been a major challenge for them. So it's a personnel issue, right? Just really getting the right kind of labor to join that workforce, because we've become a much more technical country. Those the folks that used to go into the trades, now it's a little bit more challenging to get people to go into the trades. So the aging workforce is one. The other is just the proliferation of technology, right? So
Right now,
it's changed the way that we look at, manage, and operate the grid and the infrastructure, and that's come at a quick pace. A lot of utilities are on a different trajectory for that. Some are bleeding edge. Some are, getting there later. It all depends on the challenges that I see is state by state. You have regulators that, are who manage some of the infrastructure spend for the utilities. You have to make a rate case for it. So they're going to move at different paces. Some are more, maybe some are more conservative than others. So that challenge is now with the onset of AI, data centers, the tremendous draw on energy needs. The big challenge facing utilities today is just infrastructure and generation.
right.
The demands for usage is outpacing what we have. So utilities are bringing on generation, and they're already spoken for. They're already committed to projects that are in the queue. I think a few years ago, even the PJM shut down the queue for a period of time.
Right.
There were too many projects in the queue for distributed generation and other infrastructure builds that they couldn't stay on top of them. They couldn't manage the interconnects to the grid. And I think that's going to continue. We are in a place right now as a country where the grid needs a lot of infrastructure dollars spent.
Right.
We're generation constrained, we're transmission constrained, we're substation constrained. And I don't know if we have the plans in place to meet the demands. So the demands may have to wait. So an AI data center might want to come on board in the next year, but might not be able to for 2 or 3 years.
Exactly.
So that's really the challenges I see facing the industry today.
We recently did an interview with Rachel Williams of the Southern Company, and they've gone from, in decades, they were at the 1% to 2% growth. They're 8% load demand growth, 8%. Now, they just opened Southern Nuclear just opened Plant Vocal.
Yep.
It's already sold out.
That's what I mean. It was already committed the day they flipped the switch, right?
The second largest area for data centers in the United States. Northern Virginia is the first. The Northern Atlanta area is second.
Yes.
They're in the west of Atlanta. The problem was they couldn't cut across and just put in transmission lines because it came through my neighborhood. I don't want it Howard's. No. So they had to go up, come over, and come down. It's ridiculous of what they're having to do. And we had Tim Eccles, who was one of the Public Service Commissioner people, and he's frustrated at how much time it takes to get approval for some of these projects, especially if you're cross-state or you're crossing a creek or doing anything. It's very, very frustrating time for the entire industry. That is the people and CEOs complain about you're buying all of these technological wonderful things, but they're not speaking to each other.
Right.
So the CEO is saying, I don't want anything that's not speaking to everything.
Right.
That becomes another problem. And then you mentioned all of the problems. Transformers, you're 3 to 5 years out.
Yes.
Lead times are just, and as aging infrastructure, as they age, they want more. Data centers want more. AI, everybody wants more. It's a good time to be in the transformer industry.
It is. And even there, we're talking to some of the transformer manufacturers about how can we secure production slots?
Yeah.
Because production slots and having the equipment is as important as any other aspect of getting a project off the ground. So as developers develop the land or the area and pull in the AI data center companies like Meta and AWS and others, the view now is, how do we get this data center sited and up? We might have wanted to put it in Northern Virginia. We might have wanted to put it in outside of Atlanta. But if we can get it sited in Indiana and get it in 2 years instead of 3, or 18 months instead of 3 years, we're going to do it, because they're now looking more strategically at where's their power, where's their transmission, where's their interconnects, where can we site it is actually more important than where they originally wanted it to be.
Right.
And there's a lot of things that factor into finding the right site, right? Access to power, access to the land, like you said, just the environmental approvals, the land approvals. And then at the end of the day, are you going to be able to get it on site and up and running in a time frame that meets your needs? Yeah. Otherwise, where else are you going to go? I mean, it's a competitive landscape. They're all rushing to be, first to market, really. It just is. So it's, as you said, it's a great time to be in the industry, but it's also, I can imagine for some of the developers, the data center companies, as well as the utilities, is a little frustrating. They'd like it to come on board more quickly as well.
So those are all the problems we're facing right now. Go ahead, look 5 to 10 years down the road a little bit. As the president of one of the companies and now as an EVP, you've got to be looking ahead. Mm-hmm. What is Asplundh? What do you see for the future? What are the challenges that the industry will face that we don't even know yet we face?
I think we're going to continue for some period of time to face challenges on equipment, right? Getting transformers, getting breakers, getting equipment. I don't know that there's any great advances in the next 2 to 5 years that's going to shorten that time frame. Right. That is a time-consuming process to build. Hopefully the manufacturing will continue to support that. I think it's interesting to try to look at, and it's challenging too, to figure out what's the geopolitical environment going to be, right? Yeah. Are we really going to drive manufacturing back to the United States? And even if we did, it takes some time to get a major plant up and going, or refurbish some of the ones. I mean, they're looking at TMI, right? They're looking at Palisades in Michigan. They're looking at nuclear plants that were shuttered, and thinking about can we restart some of these reactors safely and generate some power. But in addition to that, can we get the rest of the equipment and transmission sited and substations built to service that load? So it's still going to be those types of challenges. I also think as an industry, both from the contractor side and the utility side, we have to partner on driving more people into this industry. Right? More people in the trades, more technicians, more linemen, more people doing that work. It's great work. It's a great career, but it's not top of mind for a lot of high schoolers coming out looking at, am I going to go into the trades? Am I going to go to university? Right. And a lot of them are going to go to university. So I still think we'll have a potential labor challenge, as well as the equipment and technology. Then you get to the back end of all that. You're like, well, now we have, as you said, all these interconnected devices, a lot smarter devices, a lot more distributed automation and technology within the grid. How well do they all communicate? Right. And how resilient are they, and how safe are they? Cybersecurity, I think, is going to continue to be a huge challenge, because as strong as AI is for good, people are using it to better scam people, right? So there's much more sophisticated phishing that's going on, because now they can use AI to speak more in the dialect of who they're trying to reach out to and scam. So there's all types of challenges for just security and the security of our infrastructure. I know a lot of utilities have looked at that very, very acutely over the last 5 years. And how do I protect my substations? How do I protect my infrastructure? How do I protect the systems that are supporting and running and managing that? Because they are now so automated. They really have cybersecurity as a major issue. We talk about it all the time, just with our own internal workforce and our own internal email systems and the phishing attacks and the things that are happening that day to day you don't know, but when your IT group tells you how many they have blocked or how many are coming on a daily basis, it's truly frightening.
I was fortunate enough to go into a utility cybersecurity company, and they had 8 people sitting around desks attacking.
Yes.
And in the other room, they had 12 people defending, because they said if they could get it, that's amazing. The other problem is physical security. There are more nuts shooting out transformers.
Right.
They're doing physical damage to the. I wouldn't be surprised if the fire in London happening outside, that if they find out that somebody shot a slingshot at it and popped a bushing, but it's happening all over because you don't see that publicized as much, but physical and cybersecurity is a big issue. Switch gears now. Asplundh, where do you think the company's going? Because you're very different than the foliage management company that I knew.
Yeah.
How are you going to be different in the future?
Well, it's a good question. And I think the leadership of the company has made some fundamental strategic decisions about what the future looks like. And we continue to be, what I would consider the largest vegetation management company probably in the world. We operate in North America, so the US and Canada, as well as Australia and New Zealand.
Okay.
They continue to look for, organic and acquisition growth in that space. So we continue to focus, acutely on the vegetation management business. But where we see all of the upside and all of the growth and all of the potential in the marketplace, because we're not as big on that side, is the infrastructure side.
Okay.
So we're building a company in Asplundh Infrastructure that can manage all parts of that infrastructure from the generating plant to the meter on the side of the house.
Okay.
So we want to be able to do everything on the distribution and transmission systems. And we're continuing to grow both organically and through acquisition to service that space from end to end. And not just the construction, but the engineering, the design, the technical aspects of maintaining the equipment. So transformer maintenance, commissioning engineering, fault inspection, fault current. So, we're looking at just about every aspect of the utility infrastructure and building a focused and organizational growth in that area, because you see that as the growth. And, we typically think, because of most of the vegetation is for the utility sector, we still have a huge amount of industrial and commercial customers as well. On the infrastructure side, it's just a broader spectrum of customer base.
And the industrial commercial is the underserved market. They didn't go and get slots for transformers.
Right.
And now they need them, and they're going, can I buy a transformer? Well, 5 years from now, I'll get you one.
Yeah.
It's very interesting. The first thing that you said about aging of the workforce, and I'm glad you started with the trade craftspeople, because we think it's just engineers. One of the biggest bottlenecks is going to be the service people on trucks, truck rolls, and it's very hard to replace that person that happens. But you guys, by going into it, you're creating your own problem, and that's why you started with it as a real problem.
Yeah.
Well, good luck. I think Asplundh, being in this space, you're in it at the right time. You're in the right position for the right time. But anyway, thank you, David.
I appreciate it very much. Thank you.